Hi, I'm Tchad Blake, and I work in the music business for the past 40 years, maybe over 40 years. I started out as a runner, assistant coffee maker, not an assistant coffee maker, and went into engineering, recording music in some pretty big studios, and I've ended up pretty exclusively mixing now, taking people's multi-tracks and mixing it down to stereo usually. With a little bit of production on the side. And we're here to talk about hearing anomalies, specifically tinnitus and hearing loss. I know there's lots of different kinds, and there's lots of different levels, severity. But within reason, my contention is that it's not a big deal. And I don't mean that by saying that it's not hard to deal with. It's not an emotional thing to deal with. It is, even after all these years. After all these years, I should tell you, there's a backstory for me. I was born in Texas, Baytown, Texas, and brought up with guns. I had my first rifle when I was 8. My personal rifle. There were other guns around before that. And I was in a marksman class twice a month, I believe. Small caliber, .22 rifle, shooting, lots of rounds in a shooting range. And in those days, talking about the 60s here, hearing protection was not thought about. I ended up going on with getting a pistol in Texas and shooting that an awful lot around the property, and then shotguns, all without hearing protection. And it's quite a traumatic thing to hear that first shot of the day. It's just a big crack. I remember total silence for a fraction of a second, and then this tone that would just be there for a day, 2, and even 3. So in hindsight, looking at that, what that would be doing to my ear physically is incredible. I'm surprised I don't have worse hearing loss and tinnitus. But my tinnitus and hearing loss is not severe. My left side is very much different than my right side. Quite a big dip in the mids and upper mids on my left ear. And the tinnitus has always, or usually been most in this ear with a little bit in my right ear, but never bothered me until getting older and having some treatments. I had cancer, had some treatment which affected my ear and my eustachian tube. And just, listening to music all the time, it's gotten progressively worse, but it hasn't affected my hearing. My hearing has stayed the same. I've had lots of tests, so I know my hearing loss isn't getting worse. My tinnitus gets louder, but it doesn't seem to affect, like I said, my hearing loss and how I've always mixed for all these years. I'm way more protective of my ears in my old age. I wear earplugs for all sorts of things, vacuuming, sometimes even doing the dishes. Certainly live shows, anything that's going to go above 85 decibels, earplugs go in. And I try to mix at no higher than 85 decibels if I can help it. So that's the backstory. I started talking about the hearing loss. Back in 2010, I think it was, I was asked to start doing seminars for a company called Mix with the Masters. And it's a week-long seminar in a private studio with 20 participants who come, and we hang for 7 days. All the meals are together, and we just mix, or I mix, and they watch and ask questions, and we talk about things that are important to them. We talk about the psychology in the studio, and how all sorts of things. Anything goes. It's just like a big family talking about everything. And the first one, I remember somebody coming up to me in private and saying, I'll never be able to mix like you mix because I have hearing loss and tinnitus. And the tinnitus really bothers me. And it made me wonder about, like everybody else in the room, there's 19 other people in the room. And I've known a lot of engineers. Probably every engineer that's working out there has some kind of hearing loss and tinnitus. I've known producers who could only hear in one ear, or had severe tinnitus, or had real hearing anomalies, like way worse than mine. And you just get on with it. Mixing's a little bit of a different thing, and I can see that. Mixing and recording, because you rely so heavily on hearing timbre, your localization, spatial cues, all takes pretty good hearing. I really shouldn't put it that way. It doesn't take good hearing. It just takes awareness. And it takes awareness of what your hearing is. So I started talking about it with the groups, the seminar groups, and finding out that, asking people who has tinnitus, and most people raising their arms. Some people it's very low. Some people it's just a whooshing sound. Some people it's just a low frequency noise. Mine's a tone, probably 2 tones in this ear, and maybe 2, but one's kind of loud and the other's not so loud. And it was really interesting to see that. And then all the years, I've been doing that now since 2010. It's 2024. Every seminar. And trying to say, it's not a good enough excuse. I don't know, that sounds like a lot of bravado. But I think it's the only way to get it across. I don't have that much bravado myself all the time. But I try to just say, bring it on. If I have a bad day of tinnitus, I say, okay, bring it on. Get to work. Just get through it. I have days that are quite off, where I don't know if I should go to work. But I do. I do it anyway. I keep the level down. I switch my monitors left and right to make sure I'm getting a balance that I'm going to enjoy, like on it, listening at home, where it's not such a critical listen. So there's lots of things you can do, but I do really firmly believe it's not, I don't want to look at it as a disability, and I don't want anybody else to either. I want people to talk about it. It's actually a good thing for us to talk about and get it to have less of a stigma in the business. And that way, also, if we talk about it, it's in sorely need of funding for treatment, because there's plenty of doctors out there who think that they can beat it. And not just with masking. We're talking about literally getting rid of tinnitus. I know there's lots of stuff out there that says it does it, and I've seen some of these things and read them, and I can't find one that seems credible. Nothing I've tried does it. Vitamins, minerals, bioflavonoids, none of it has done a thing. Well, except for one. Can I mention it?
Yeah.
The only thing I've found, and I have no scientific evidence for this, but I've always, since my high school days, I've been a druggie. I don't smoke pot. Never been good for me. I don't do intravenous. I don't snort. It's always been psychedelics. They seem to work for me. I loved them. In school and throughout my life, I've always come back to them. LSD, psilocybin, mescaline, peyote, whatever was going, And these days, no. In the last few decades of my life, I didn't do anything, really, except maybe the occasional mushroom. And now, mushrooms, I microdose sometimes, and sometimes a little bit more. I don't trip. I don't do trips. But what I found is that when I've taken some mushrooms and I get a little bit more than a microdose, there have been, I'd say, 60 to 70% of the time, I get a real reduction in my tinnitus. And in fact, there's been days where my bad ear, which I can hear over driving a tractor, so it's not debilitating, but it's not quiet either. It's gone. And I sit there and I go out in the quiet of a quiet field and I go, okay, where is it? And I focus. And anybody who's got tinnitus knows that the minute you think about it, it seems to double in level. All of you know, you're going through the day and you're going, wow, my tinnitus is pretty good. And then you go, oh, there it comes. Just because you focused on it. And yeah, so not that I'm not advocating people taking psychedelics to get rid of their tinnitus and to, overcome any hearing anomaly they have. I am saying it because I think there should be some research done into it. There should be money thrown at this to see what that is. Is that a real thing? Is that just me? I don't know. But I noticed it, and I'm still noticing it. So I'm mentioning it because I'd like it to be looked into. I had the good fortune of meeting somebody who was very inspirational to me. I read a book during my just after my cancer treatment when I was going for all my follow-up checkups. I had to go by a bookstore, and one day I went in there, and there was a book called Sound, a story of hearing lost and found. And I thought, oh, wow, okay, sound, I got to get that. Bright yellow cover. And I bought it, and I ended up reading it cover to cover pretty quickly. And I found myself in tears sometimes. And, she wasn't talking about necessarily tinnitus or anything. It's one woman's story about her journey through deafness that came on. It was diagnosed as being brought on by head trauma first. And after 12 years, it was re-diagnosed as being a hereditary condition with some sort of growth on her stapes, which they said there was now a treatment. She could have her stapes replaced. This is quite a while ago, so it was at the beginning of this treatment. I think that's become more commonplace now. At this time, I think it was only happening in France, having the operation, and it was quite experimental. But the book is, for me, was inspirational, not for any other reason than that she was a photojournalist and a very lovely writer, and she persevered in her job. It didn't stop her at all. She would go and interview people and not be able to hear them. And so she would ask a wrong question, only to find out that, with some sort of hearing, like playing something back really loudly and where she could maybe hear, I don't know how she did it, but she found out that she asked a wrong question to an answer because she couldn't hear the person talking. But she persevered. And that was something I really needed at the time, was to see somebody go through that and persevere. I highly recommend the book. The last chapter was her. She's one of these people that when she gets her hands on something, she won't let go. She's a researcher, and she's a brilliant one. And she decided she wanted to know how other people deal with their hearing loss. By the way, she had the operation, touch and go for a while, but it was successful. And she is now fully hearing and writing other books. But the last chapter of the book, she had the idea to get people in the music business, because she's quite a music fan, to get people in the business to talk about their hearing loss. And she couldn't. Nobody would talk. She wrote people, no, sorry, not going to talk about my hearing loss, not going to talk about my tinnitus. until she contacted Giles Martin, who doesn't have hearing loss, but his dad did, George Martin, who was the producer of the Beatles, for those who might be too young to know that. Produced all those records in 10 years of records by the Beatles. And Giles became his father's ears in later life. He's quite an accomplished engineer himself. And she went to talk to him to find out the story of him working with his father and working through the hearing loss with him. And that's all I'll say about that. It's a wonderful chapter, but that inspired me again on top of the book that came before. And I had to say something, so I ended up writing to her, and she happily replied, and we've actually become friends now. It turns out she only lives a few hours from me. I thought she was around the world somewhere. And we've talked about tinnitus, and we've had group meetings. I have a friend, Andrew Sheps. We started a group of conversations where we would show up at pubs and invite people, whoever wanted to come from anywhere in the world, to come visit us for 6-7 hours at a pub while we drank and talked about anything they wanted to. And Bella ended up being, for every one of them, our guest of honor, because she wanted to be part of that and actually be there and talk to people, and that's what she had wanted for the book. So it's become a little bit of a crusade. She's put me in touch with an old friend of mine, Jack Rubinacci, who I did a record for years ago, and who is now, unbeknownst to me all these years, until very recently, and because of Bella, we have been in touch. And he's sort of spearheading this drive of getting more people on board to talk about tinnitus and hearing loss in every field, whatever field, acting, entertainment, and arts, maybe most particularly. And I think it's such a good thing. So yeah, I've jumped at the chance to be a part of this, and it really does help me think that, to continue it on in the other areas of the seminars and our get-togethers. I'll have to have you come to one of our get-togethers next time, Jack. And with Bella, because Bella comes to those things. And just get more of a conversation going for no other reason than to raise awareness. But the awareness is the only thing that's going to bring capital to this issue and funding. Because if the numbers are that great, which I'm absolutely sure the hearing loss and tinnitus numbers are high, way higher than anybody imagines, and severe too, and what people are living with, there's money to be made. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a bad thing when people get greedy and it's gouging for money. But to have a business that can help people at a reasonable cost and improve their lives in a way that people can afford, that should happen. Not just in hearing, but in all health issues. There should be a way to do that. I mean, I think there is a way to do that. I don't know how. But I'd like to see that in my lifetime, if that can happen. I've been asked just to just briefly say a few words on what I do with my particular brand of hearing loss. It's a little bit more than that. After my treatment, I had throat cancer, and I had chemoradiation, which has done some work on, one thing, my teeth on this side of my jaw, my gums, which are a mess. But it's also given me scar tissue on my voice box. and my eustachian tube, because it was a pretty focused beam, but, collateral damage. So I have this ear, it has a hard time pressurizing in different humidities and different temperatures. So what I found, and you know what, to me it ended up being a better way to mix. I sort of wish I'd started it earlier, even before my treatment, that instead of mixing one song in a day, I like having a couple, 2, 3 going. But do those over a 3-day period. So I'm still mixing one song a day, basically. But they get spread out over different temperatures and humidity, and it gives my ears a chance to rest. And it's just, it's a different day. Caffeine affects you differently every day. What you had to eat can all affect the way you hear things. So that's one thing that I do. I like to spread it out. And I take way more breaks now than I used to, which is also better, in general, for health. I mentioned the thing about having, I have a button on my desk that switches left and right. That, if I feel like something's wrong and I just want to check it with the mid-range, I flip the speakers. Usually there's no change. I just go, oh yeah, okay, no, that sounds fine. But I do it anyway because I know what my curve looks like on this ear. But I probably compensate for it just naturally now after all these years. I don't really think about it too much. Mixed volume, I try to keep it, 85 and under. Most of the time when I'm doing arrangement work and, big brush stroke, EQing and levels, I go on the small speakers and I'm usually somewhere at like 65 decibels, 70. Big speakers, maybe I'll do it 65, 70, and then I'll check for final EQ at 85 with some peaks approaching 90, but when it starts getting up there, I can't do much more than a few minutes of peaks. Not like, it's got to be like 83, 84 with peaks going up to 90. If I get louder than that, then I can feel that it's going to be problematic. So I keep it down. I don't want to give my ears any excuse to get worse. So those are a couple of things that I do. Earplugs in all sorts of situations that you have any fear about at all. Earplugs, and there's great ones now. Loops I find are really great because you can tailor them for hearing. You can actually just bring the volume down by 10 dB or something, and you can hear people talking. There are these earplugs that actually let the frequencies through quite balanced, and it doesn't sound like you're wearing earplugs. It just brings the level down. And so I'm quite happy for those. And they're tiny. They fit in my pocket. I don't even feel them in my pocket. I always have them with me. So that's a couple of pointers. And so I was asked by somebody a couple of years ago that they had a student there, an engineer. They had a student with severe hearing loss who wanted to mix. And I was saying earlier today, I'd really be interested in hearing that. Well, just to expand on that a little bit, I do think that, we talk about anomalies and all sorts of things. Jack was mentioning a jazz musician who had tinnitus and hearing loss and played their instrument around it. And they were incredible. I don't know who that is, but, and so the tinnitus and the hearing loss became kind of as the catchphrase is these days, their superpower. I've heard about Van Gogh, or Van Gogh, or however you want to pronounce it, having syphilis and being on medication for it. And that's why he saw what he saw in like Starry Night, all these, or maybe had cataracts or something. So I didn't hold him back. And in fact, we, look at his paintings and go, oh my gosh, it's a masterpiece. And I think it's a good thing to take that into account. And no matter how small your loss is or how severe it is to think about it as something that could actually be on your side. I think that now. I've been doing my work all this time, and has it guided me? I hadn't noticed that it guided me at all. But thinking back, did it make me shy away from, like in my, I'm not big on top end. I like low end. I always have. I don't like really bright records. I've gotten brighter as I've gotten older. I think that's sort of natural. With probably my normal amount of hearing loss for my age. I'm 69, and my hearing's pretty good, I'm told, for 69. And I do often think now, what would be different in my mixing if I hadn't shot guns back in Texas? It's a weird way to think, but I think it's the only right way to think, or it's the only way to think positively about it. I think it helps you think positively about it. No, that's not the right way to say it. It is a positive way of thinking about it. And it should. I don't like that word should. But I want it to be positive. Do you know? I want it to be a positive thing. Because it's there. It ain't going away. So, what can I do about it? It's there. Bring it on. Get on with it. And, yeah, now I can think back and go, shit, I might not have made all those records with those crunchy, dull sounds, if I was really sensitive to high frequencies or mid frequencies. So find out. It's a good thing, I think, to know where your hearing loss is. Have a look. Go get it tested. Don't go to your normal GP. Spend the money and get a full bandwidth up to 20K down to, 50 hertz, and get it mapped. Have a look and see where it is. And that could be your baseline for now. No pun intended there. For knowing how you go as you get older. Because I did that. And we're looking at my charts now and seeing that my hearing hasn't really changed since like the mid-'80s. My actual hearing loss has very little changed. Really high frequency, 17K or something, has come down a little bit in both ears. But my mid-range, same as it's been, pretty much. I don't notice a difference. So, yeah, if you know where it lies, then you know what to do and how to counter it if you think you need to. So, yeah, let's do that. And yeah, bring it on.